Hello guys, welcome back. Should you take a gap year? Well, this is a question which I was asking myself in 2000, in the year 2000, 21 years ago. And looking back now, in hindsight, I think I made the right decision. Because when you are studying, you're very focused, like in a tunnel vision. And I found that you get more perspective when you take time off from studying. So in today's episode, me and Joe are going to talk about the benefits and pitfalls of taking a gap year. Okay, Joe, welcome back.
Hello, Tariq. You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. So, Joe, you, like myself, we both spent time away from education in working in different countries. Could you tell the audience a little bit about your experience of working abroad, traveling abroad, and what you've done before you went into studying?
Yeah, I think I've had a different route through education than many other people. I came back into higher education when I was a lot older. Prior to that, I'd been at college until I was, the normal route, school and college. But then I sort of lost my way, and I felt like, okay, I ended up in a lot of my friends were getting jobs straight away, and I felt like, oh, I need to go and do a job. But the jobs that I ended up in were not the jobs that I wanted for the rest of my life, because, I've soon realised that you need some qualifications in order to get to where you want to be. And it took me time to get to that point, if I'm being honest. I was around about 24, 25 by that point when I realised, right, I need to think about learning again. And we talked previously in our other discussions about this readiness to learn, about when is the right time to do it. And for me, perhaps that was the right time. I look back and think, if I was 18, 19, with a view to going into university, I really wasn't ready at that point. So why was I not ready? I had to go and develop myself in other ways. So through the numerous jobs that I'd had, I feel like, it's only in hindsight now I can look back and say this, that I developed some skills, personal skills, that I could then use to take forward into a life in education. And following those jobs, I then made a decision to go and travel abroad as well, which, I can sit here and say is another form of education, really. I learned so much about myself and how I fit within the world, and how I can, what I want to do with myself for the rest of my life during those 2 years away traveling. So yeah, it's not to dismiss the jobs that I've done previously when I left school and went into these jobs. Some people would be quite derogatory and say that they were dead-end jobs, but I would say that they've taught me so much. I learned how to work with others. I had a discipline of how to look after my time management, for example. Getting up and going to work and getting a routine. We've talked about those things before, but I think those are the skills that you don't realise are the foundation of anything. And that helped me when I then decided to come back to higher education later in life, because I'd been through all that and I've got that foundation already. Now, a lot of students that I work with, they still haven't developed that. So they struggle when they come to university, especially with the independent living side of things. So some advice that I'm giving to students at the moment is, if you're not ready for it, then stop, go away and do some of the things that I've done. Go and do some jobs. Then they don't have to be jobs that are going to set you up for the rest of your life, or a career that you want, but they could be just some jobs for a short term that get you like a different view of the world. So that I think that happened for me, for myself. You learn how to work with others, you learn how to develop a routine and work hard for yourself. So prior to that, I didn't have those things. It helped me develop a little bit of confidence, but I think what I was able to build then was when I traveled abroad. I really felt that I came out of my shell a lot more then. I found out that I could quickly I had to work out how to communicate with people, how to like work a different system. You know, how to it's a different system of working, because I lived in Australia for a year, I lived in America for a year. Some similarities, but lots of differences as well. So then I was able to like understand those and shape my own personal skills that way. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying things, but that's what happened for me. Yeah.
That's quite interesting, because also, Joe, I think, do you know when you say the word gap year, I think a lot of people have the idea in their mind that it means going to a different country and traveling. It doesn't necessarily mean going and traveling. It can be taking time off to work, to do other things other than study, doesn't it? You can do other things rather than just travel. I mean,
and I guess you could argue that I did my sort of gaps before I came to university. Yeah, I'd done all that and got that out of the system. Tried to understand myself and develop these personal skills. And then, when I was on my travels, I started to reflect a lot and think about like, okay, what's happening to me right now? What am I developing? And what can I then use it for in the future? Where am I heading with this? And the conclusion I drew was, I want to go back and do the degree that I should have always done. And I got to the stage where, yes, I'm ready to do education now. I'm ready to commit to that. I have all of these other skills developed now. I'm ready to go back and learn. And I can quite confidently sit here and say now that that's the reason why I've been successful in my university career. Because I was more settled and ready. There's no way I would have got the outcome that I have done if I was 19 years old. Looking at the 19-year-old self, I think you've asked me that before. You know, I think like I've developed this way of being committing to things, resilience, work ethic. Those things have seen me through these last 12 years of education that I've been doing.
Because so Joe, I think you're right in terms of when you travel or when you work, it kind of gives you the habits, the work habits, which are really transferable life skills for studying, aren't they?
Exactly. Exactly that. Yeah.
Because I mean, maybe Joe, you can relate as well. I mean, basically, you know, my story is that when I was 19, I was working in college in WH Smith's and Blackburn Rovers part-time during when I was a student, and when I worked full-time for the holidays. And then what my plan initially was to go to America and work there for a few months and then come back and then work full-time in any job, just to try and get some money together for university. And basically, in a nutshell, what happened was it fell through because I didn't have an unconditional offer at uni. So I actually had a job as a lifeguard in America kind of lined up. So that fell through. But I ended up doing it the way around. So basically, I worked full-time for a call center for 3 months in Preston. And then I went basically traveling in Australia for a year. And one of the things which I learned was kind of the kind of things which you encounter as a student for the first time, living away from home, having to manage finances, having to cook yourself. I mean, I remember trying to make chips for the first time. I burnt the chips. I made them more like mashed potatoes. So
yeah. Well, I think what you're exactly, and what you're trying to say there, people who haven't been through that won't realize that when you go and you're put into a different world, you're put into a different country, for example, you have to learn very quickly how to do these things, how to fend for yourself. And I guess what we're both describing here is what some students are encountering when they first come to campus, because they've come from a world where they're comfortable to somewhere where they feel like out of the depth. So they've got to learn these skills very quickly. And I felt that happened for me when I went to Australia, for example. How to work with others, how to communicate with others effectively. Within the first few days of being there, straight away. So taking yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes is a good thing. Yeah.
Because Joe, I mean, when we both went abroad and we both worked, this was kind of pre-social media days. So I'm thinking about it now. I mean, it's not to kind of diminish anyone who's traveling or done what we've done now, but I think in a way it was harder because you're really flung in the deep end, because I went when I was 19 to Australia, living pretty much sheltered and living in Blackburn. And then all the way in Australia, first time going Hong Kong, Australia, all these places. And it hit home. I was lying down in bed and I thought, if I screw up, it's down to me. I've got to make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's quite a big pressure. It's quite a big.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
exactly. And I suppose what he's saying is today a positive outcome is that there's more connectivity. People who are on the other side of the world, for example, are able to connect a lot easier than when we did it. And yeah, I mean, my stepson he's in Canada right now. He's calling every day, so I mean, it's a lot easier to connect with people yeah, your point is that you have to fend for yourself quite quickly, and that develops you, doesn't it?
It's like sink or swim, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Because kind of reflecting about our time abroad, and even out of study, it can be anything. But I found that, especially when you're young, you're influenced, I think, quite largely by your peers. So there's an element of peer pressure. But taking yourself out of that situation, I found it was like the horse with the blinders was removed. Blinders were removed, and it was more of a kind of bird's eye view of the situation. So you can kind of take stock of it and think, okay, don't need to rush here.
Yeah. And so what you're describing there sounds like, have you ever heard of Plato's allegory of the cave? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard, yeah, I've heard of it. What is it about again?
It's all about enlightenment. So basically, Plato told this story of prisoners in a cave, and they were chained up, and they were looking at the wall of the cave for many years, and that became their reality. That's the only world that they knew. And then the captors would put a fire behind them, and they would put pictures through the flames, and they would reflect onto the wall of the cave, and they would tell stories. And then they started to think that, right, okay, this is reality. This is what it is. However, one day the chains were taken off, and the prisoners were led outside of the cave, and they realized quickly there was a whole world out there that they'd never encountered before, and they didn't realize. A bit like the film Truman Show, isn't it? You've seen the film The Truman Show. It's a bit like that kind of idea of Truman is the guy that's in that big massive film studio, and he believes that because he's been born into that world, that's the only world he knows. But actually it's a film studio, and there's a whole planet beyond that studio. It's a bit like what Plato was writing about, and what you're describing is a bit like what we've also found, is that when we've come out of our small little bubble, we've become more enlightened about the world, haven't we? Yeah, and I can say that has happened to me, and it definitely has happened for yourself, hasn't it? Yeah. I
mean, Joe, do you know what you're describing about Plato's allegory of the cave? It reminds me of something which I read the other week. It was about if you ask a fish what is water, and they won't know, and
because that's their life, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think, and also, I mean, I think you've mentioned something similar in our previous discussions, that when you do something different, you gain different skills. So, for example, I'm not a sports person, but like I know you're into cricket. But if you do, like, for example, other sports, like, I don't know, football, rugby, or badminton, or whatever, you develop the kind of skills which I think you can apply them in different...
Adaptable.
Adaptable, yeah. And I think
skills,
I think there's like some cross-referencing going on. And I think when you see the world, you can see different things. So, for example, real life example, it was only when I started working full-time after I'd finished my studies that I could actually see Weber's Bureaucracy and Iron Cage in action. And that's when the penny dropped for me. It kind of clicked.
Yeah, because everything that you'd learned up to that point was just theoretical. And now you're applying it in a real life contextual situation. Then it starts to gel and click together. And it's the same for lots of students that we work with, where everything is being fired at them from a textbook or through a seminar or whatever. And it's sort of abstract to them. Yet when that same information is then applicable in the real world context, then the penny drops, like you said. They start to be able to apply it, and I guess the underlying message of our discussion here is that you should take yourself out of your bubble sometimes, and become more enlightened out of it, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be afraid to expose yourself to new environments and new challenges.
Yeah, because Joe, for me, because it was such a pivotal point in my life. I just finished college, and I was going to university a year later. For me, I think I needed that break because I just needed to kind of get out. But looking back now, I remember when we were at work a long time ago, you said to me, in life, the things which are valuable to us are not just materials, but it's the experiences which we have in life, the people we meet, the experiences which we have.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if you've heard the old phrase about millionaires, that there's no point being the richest man in the graveyard. What's the point in having loads of material goods and lots of money if you've had no experience in life, or you've got nothing concrete to offer the world? You know, that sort of links to your point there, I suppose. That it's actually about what have you impacted on the world while you've been here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joe, thinking back to when you traveled, because you worked, I think, as a ski instructor, didn't you? And do you work on a beach in Miami?
No, I've never been to Miami. I lived in California.
Ah, okay.
We worked near to a beach, building a bar.
Yeah.
I was working in construction as a labourer in construction, which again, it's taking me into something new, a new field, new way of doing things, trying something else. Soon realised that actually labouring and construction is not for me. You know, I'm not dismissing it. I enjoy some of that kind of work, but then I realised, right, actually, I've tried this. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want a career in teaching and coaching people, which is what's led me back to this path of seeking out education. So,
I mean,
go on.
I was just saying, could you give us any kind of any stories which were really memorable for you from your travels? Kind of things which really stood out, some maybe funny stories, or anything which you thought were really interesting or really stood out over the years?
It's hard to put it down into just one question, isn't it? I mean, I've been to so many places and met so many different people. But yeah, I mean, one thing that, like, if you're talking about linking to our previous discussions about reflection, I found myself once decided to drive to Ayers Rock while I was in Australia. I had a car, decided that, like, ski season had finished. I was due to meet some friends a few weeks down the line, so I had a few weeks, and I thought, right, I'm going to go on this big road trip of my own, and decided to drive out there. And on the map it looks quite small, but let me tell you, it's a long way out there. I just got in the car and drove, and I did 1,000 kilometers for 4 days running.
Oh.
So that's a lot of driving. We're talking 600 and odd miles a day, 4 days in a row. I was quite exhausted, but when I got out there in the middle of this desert, because that's what it is, it's a desert, I stopped the car. I've got some videos of it, and I realized it was just me on my own in this middle of this world. And that's where it really that's where I really sat down and had to think to myself, right, okay, what are you going to do with yourself now, mate? What are you going to do with your life? So you could think that these are like sliding door moments, aren't they? Where actually I could have just carried on doing what I was doing, or I could have gone to and done this journey that's made me sit up and realize, actually, come on, what are you doing, lad? You know, wake up, sort of take hold of your life, you know. And it was at that moment when I was out there that actually I realized, right, when I come away from this desert, because it's quite scary and daunting being out there on your own. When I come away from this desert, I'm going to go back and I'm going to, like, get my head down, and I'm going to do what I should have always done. If we wind back a few months before then, before I went on my travels abroad, I had a cancer scare. It wasn't cancer, but it was enough to jolt me into life, because I was going through the motions for many years, up till about the age of, I was around about the age of 26 then when that happened. I got an innocuous injury at cricket, and I went for a scan, and the scan revealed some clots, and the doctors thought that it was tumorous tissue. So I walked out of the hospital that day thinking, you know what the hell is going on here? You know, wake up, what are you doing? You know, I had a few more tests and I was due to have an operation, but the things all were reviewed, and thankfully I came out of that, and I was okay, and I was given the all clear. It wasn't cancer, but it was enough to say to me, right, come on, you know, you're only here once on this planet. You've got to do better. So I've been on a quest then. Since then, that changed my life. I've been on a quest then to get as, you know, to better myself, to get as good as I can. So that's included going through all of these qualifications at university. It's helped me with my coaching. So I live a different life now to add to my cancer scare, where I was just sort of going emotionless through life, happy in a mundane job. You know, I didn't feel like I was going anywhere. So sometimes my message from that little anecdote is that you need a jolt in life in order to make you sit up and notice. So suppose those two things combined, my bit of a cancer scare combined with my journey into the middle of nowhere on my own, those two things combined made me a better person, I think.
Joe, I was just thinking, do you know what you just said? It's like a metaphor, because you had the jolt, but then you're on a journey in the middle of nowhere, and you could say that's like representative of life, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds corny, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does sound corny, because a lot of people who've not had those kind of moments in life would just say, "What are you talking about? You know, you're a balloon. You're just." But I can genuinely say those things happen to me, and you know, you could paint it in a romantic light that that since then I've changed and I've been a better person for it. And I'm on this quest now to help other people through education, which is what I do.
Because Joe, do you know
it's a driver of my philosophy.
Yeah. Because I think when I talk about my gap year to people and friends and other people, other students, I always kind of look at it with kind of how do you say, romantic? I've forgotten the term. You know, those
through a romantic lens.
Maybe. Yeah, from a romantic lens. You know, like with rose-tinted spectacles. I think. Yeah, but I think back as well. It was very good, but also I think some of the challenges were sometimes difficult, and at the time they weren't. So, for example, when I was running out of money in Australia, and because I had to learn the hard way about budgeting. I was earning about $400 a week doing this call center work. And basically my life was dependent on that money. So I learned the hard way of how to budget. And
that's not a bad thing, though, is it?
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a bad thing, but
it was at the time.
At the time it felt difficult because I couldn't just phone up and say I need some money. I had to make this work, and because also for me as well, Joe. You know, Pakistanis back then in the year 2000, early 90s. For my circle, no one had done what I'd done. So for me, I had to make it work because I had a bit of resistance from family members and other people saying, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I thought, if I go back, people will say, look, we told you shouldn't go. So I had that as well. Partly, I have to make it work to show that it can be done.
Well, that says something about the individual. It says something about you with a bit of resilience and drive and determination. There are other people out there that don't have that. So how can we then help those people to develop that? Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, isn't it? Yeah.
Because also on a more kind of personal note with traveling, one thing I found is that when you see different people from different places, you realize kind of people have so many different ways, and I think it makes you more empathetic to other people.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I was just going to come on to that point myself, that those people that haven't been outside of the bubble or exposed to new cultures and new environments don't have that empathy. Yeah, and so that creates a lot of conflict, and we see that today, don't we, in society. So it's good to take yourself away from your own world, have a little time understanding other people's worlds, because that makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I think it's as simple as that for me.
Because Joe, one of it, we were talking about things which stood out. I mean, because when I was 19, 20 years old, obviously my working experience had just been as a student in England, WH Smith, Blackburn Rovers, pizza place, McDonald's, all these kind of studenty kind of jobs. So the interactions I had were with, British people. But I remember I remember this distinctively, is that I was working in the call centre in Sydney. And I suffer from hay fever, and one day I didn't come in, and I phoned in sick, and I thought, oh, they're gonna kind of blast me, why were you ill and stuff, and blah blah. Sometimes, because travellers, when we're travelling, I felt there's a bit of pressure. So my manager said to me, "Oh, Tariq, are you okay? You should take the day off if you're not feeling well." But because that quite contrasted quite markedly with my experience in McDonald's, and you basically were, it's like. I mean, when I was working in, it's very different, very different.
You're treated like you're managed like a robot, aren't you?
Yeah, and I remember that really stood out because he treated me really kind, and the the Australian culture. For what I used to do was I would work in the call center. I think like 8 till 6 o'clock, something like that, and then I would just go straight onto the bus to the beach, because I live near the beach in Coogee. So I had like
nice.
Boogie board, and I'd go surfing, boogie board surfing for. I also after work on the beach, go home, and I remember that I had like a Pavlovian association with the nice weather and going out to the beach. And one of the difficulties was when I came back, when I saw the weather, I was like, oh, I can't just go out to the beach into the sea. In fact, I remember this actually, Joe. I was on my way back home. I stopped off in Hawaii for a bit. I was in Waikiki, and I remember I was on my surfboard, and where you're waiting to get the catch the wave. So as I was sat on the surfboard, I was looking up, kind of crystal blue skies, waiting for the surf to come in to catch the wave. And I thought to myself, in a few days, I'm going to be back home in Blackburn. And I thought, heart sank.
So what you're associating there is the weather and the climate with positivity, as opposed to negativity, aren't you? But if we just wind back to what you're saying about Australia, you're painting a picture that everything is beautiful. The working conditions are not always what from my experience, what you're saying they are. For when I worked in a farm in Australia, I was the immigrant, so I'm now able to understand how immigrants are treated here in this country, because I've been the immigrant in another country.
Yeah.
I was working on a farm with lots of other people from different nationalities, doing very, very tough work, and the management were treating us pretty poorly. So I did feel, out of the group that I was working with, I was quite lucky because I was the English speaking one. So they treated me a bit more favourably, but still tough conditions. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, no matter where you go in the world, if you are the immigrant, you are the underclass, aren't you? So you're treated differently. And I feel like I'm then able to understand immigrants to this country a lot better and work with them. I think a lot more people need to be exposed to working with different cultures, don't they? To understand that. I mean, my stepson, he's been to Australia and he's been to Canada, similar kind of experiences. Yeah, as the immigrant, you don't have the same kind of rights, do you?
Was it called woofing, I think, where you can do farm work in exchange for accommodation and food? Because
the program that I embarked on was this national government program of agricultural work, where you can do, if you give yourself, if you give back to the country 3 months of labour, then they would look more favourably on you when you wanted to get another visa, for example. So I was on a 12-month visa, and if I wanted another 12 months, I had to do 3 months of this agricultural work. 3 months of that work is not the glorious Australia that you see on the postcards, So although yes, you've had a great experience there in Sydney, and you've experienced some good management from your boss. It's not always like that. I just thought I'd make that clear.
That's a good point.
But in the same vein, it also strengthens you and educates you a lot more. So that I feel that working with in other countries, having being exposed to different working conditions is good. You know, although it was for a short term, I knew that it was only going to be for a short term. It taught me so much. Yeah. So if we wind the discussion back towards how this affects students, you know, they're coming to a campus in a different part of the country, for example, or maybe from a different part of the world. It's the same, isn't it? It's how do you acculturate within a new environment? It's tough, yeah. So what you were describing there about having to make it work is the same as what some students are experiencing when they first land at university. They've got to make it work. They've got to get through that first year. The first year is the toughest for me, because especially the first semester. So where I work at my university, we're talking about doing some transition to HE work for the first semester from next year. For those that are landing at university for the first time, they're coming out of the bubble where everything's been comfortable, and now they're facing this new world altogether. So we're going to be doing some kind of support work to help those students acculturate into their new environment, because I think it's a growing thing amongst the young people today that this idea of resilience is lacking. We've talked about it in our previous discussions. Resilience is key to being a student, getting through that first year, and you get through that, and you can really kick on then after that. So it's we've been through it ourselves, so this is what we're trying to get the message across here to young people, aren't we?
Joe, do you know, when you think back to when you worked on the farm and you're saying it's tough working conditions, was it like Of Mice and Men, where you've got like a dictatorship, and you've got
not quite that bad, but it wasn't like glamorous, let's put it that way. You know, you're bending over small fruit and vegetable bushes all day long in 40-degree temperatures. It's grimy, it's sweaty. You know, you do build a bit of camaraderie with the people you're working with, and that's important to get through things. So maybe that's something we can get across to students here, that you need to form relationships with your peers, because that camaraderie, that bond, gets you through. So that was useful. You know, I found it quite, you know, working 12-hour shifts on a farm like that was quite tough, but also you built a bond with people from different parts of the world. You know, I worked in my group, there were people from France, from Germany, Sweden, there were some Korean people, you know, people I hadn't worked with before, those kind of people. So, you know, and I remember sitting with those groups and asking them questions about where they come from. And I think more people should actively seek to do that kind of stuff, because we're then more accepting of other people then, aren't we?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that the discussion that we started off here about a gap year has diverged, doesn't it, onto this one of resilience and how to help people become more independent. Yeah.
Because, you know, in FE, and one of the big drivers in FE is developing independent learning, and because that's really the crux of success, isn't it, in universities? Basically using your own brain, working independently. And I think that's taking a year off. If you're not reliant on family or you know, people paying your bills, it develops your own independence, doesn't it? Where you got to think for yourself how to be independent.
You're working in FE now at the moment, and I'm working in HE. But the thing is that I think there needs to be an overhaul of FE, because there's a bridge that is a crucial bridge for people that are going from school into university, and at the moment it's not setting them up well enough to come into university. So we're doing some sort of like work with students to build that back up, if you get what I mean. So for the first, like I said, this transition to HE has come around because we don't feel that the colleges have had enough support, or the structure is not right to set young people up to come to university. There needs to be more. And the kind of things that you discussed there about building independent learning and resilience are key to that. Yeah.
But George, you know, because I've taught previously, I've taught access courses at college. I think they're quite useful as that bridge to kind of give students some of the study skills, like learning how to write bibliography, how to reference properly, research, all these kind of things.
Yeah, there needs to be more of that, if I'm being honest,
Yeah.
because the students that I'm working with, they don't have that. They've not been exposed to enough of it. So it's like you spend the first year like going back over that kind of stuff with them. And whereas if they'd had more of it at college, they can hit the ground running at university and really kick on, and we can start to get into more critical kind of discussions. So yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think with this sort of FE, I do think that there needs to be some kind of shake up there. I remember doing some teaching a few years back on an access course myself, and the good thing about those particular courses was the timing of all of the submissions used to come quite thick and fast, which does help prepare students when they come to university, because we do have that, you know, that they're able to understand that your work needs to be sort of planned out better and more effectively, because you're going to have lots of deadlines coming thick and fast. And that's not a bad thing, because you know, students who've been able to do that at college and then subsequently at university are able to go off into the big wide world and be able to meet deadlines more effectively. At the moment, that's just not happening.
Yeah.
You know, that's my honest account of the students that I'm working with. They cannot balance out the work that's required to do 6 modules a year. You know, so I've got students who are working on foundation entry courses. They only have 4 modules a year. It's the same. They're still struggling to meet the demands of 4 modules a year. So if there's some work done further upstream, like in FE in college, before those students came to university, they'd start to understand more about meeting deadlines thick and fast, which I think the access courses did quite well, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. But yeah, so we've looked at like some of the positives of a gap year. What do you think could I can't see any really, but do you think there are any kind of drawbacks for having a gap year or a year off working before studying?
Well, I think we talked about this earlier. I mean, one of the main things is that not everybody can afford to do that, can they? Not everybody can afford to take time away from things because for various reasons. So if it could be people come from deprived backgrounds, they can't afford to take a year out just to go and travel or to go and do something else. Some people might have an emerging family, so they can't have that time off. They're either studying full time or studying part time alongside working, and they just can't get that downtime or that time away to do something else. It's just that discussion's off the table for those kind of people. So if you're looking for some kind of drawback, then yeah, some people it's just not possible for them to have this time away.
Yeah. But what about
in terms of like what you're saying about going exposing yourself into a new environment or a new bubble, yeah, that's great. I think if everyone gets the chance to do that kind of thing, then yeah, go and do it. And whether it's going working in several different jobs or whether it's going traveling the world, then I would encourage that every day of the week. Yeah.
But because with having a gap year, would you? I mean, I think for young people, like say 19 or in the 20s, I think we should take the year off to, even if it's work, and then when they finish their studies, they should maybe go to a different country for a couple of years, because I think it really opens you up, opens your perspective when you see different people.
I agree, and I think it all comes back to context as well, because it depends on what kind of line of work you want to go into. Now, for us as educators, we've come from an education background. I think it's vital that people take time away from education before they come back to it, because we've had these chats in the past before where I've worked with teachers who have never left the education system. They've gone from school to college to university to teacher training and back into school again. So what new things have they got to bring to the table? what new experiences or what perspective have they got that's different or original? And I would say that I would argue that they don't have that. Whereas like for yourself or myself, we've gone and worked in several different jobs in different cultures, different environments. So we're able to come into a life in education later, older, wiser, more experienced, and gotten some new things to bring to the table. So I think maybe there should be a cut-off. People that want to become a teacher should do it later in life, maybe 25 onwards.
Because I know the police, they like people to go back later to apply when they're a bit older, when they've got a bit of life experience. I did a bit of teaching in Poland before I went into teaching, and so I tried to learn a bit of Polish. So I did that a couple of times. I went teaching on the summer camps, and I found that, you know, for example, when I had Polish students in my classroom, I just said a couple of words to them in Polish, Cześć, you know, Barty, maybe, how are you? Such a good rapport builder. Yeah,
helps build rapport early, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Straight away. Yeah. So, but I mean, other fields. I mean, I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day about the role that I'm doing as a coach right now, and it'd be very difficult for somebody to come and do my job as a coach at the age of, say, 21, because they're still finding things out about themselves. They're still trying to understand how they fit within the world. So it's vital. It's hard to be a coach like myself at a young age. I accept that, and there's lots of students on my sports coaching courses at the university who are in the same boat, and it's hard for them. So what we always advise those students to do is throw themselves into as many different environments and experiences of coaching as possible, to pick up lots of different, this kind of stuff that you're talking about, like connecting with people, how to do that kind of stuff. And those are things that are under the surface that you don't realize. Yeah, so I think that's quite interesting. And yeah, I mean, like for my particular role, I'd like to think that I'm coming into it a lot older, a lot wiser, gone through those jolt moments, for example, that I talked about, that make me able to empathize a lot better with people. There's no way I could have done this job when I was 21. No way. So yeah, I think it's important, isn't it? But you've got to understand that at the same time, there are some young people out there who've got a clear career path and career thing in mind that they want to do. So in that context, maybe it's okay to carry on studying and not take that break, and keep everything fresh in the mind, which is going to help them progress in their career. So, you know, maybe they want to be a mathematician. Is it wise to take years away from maths to come back to it? You know, because it's one of those things that you have to keep updating your skills with, isn't it? You know, just as an example. Yeah. So I think yeah, it depends on the context, doesn't it?
So Joe, I mean, to finish off on this last part, then, if you saw like you may have had this already. If a 19-year-old who just finished college came to you and said, "Look, Joe, I don't know what I want to do. I've just got these A levels, BTEC, or whatever. My college course is finished. I'm not sure what I want to do. I've got an opportunity to work for a year, and then they work for a year, and then come back to you and say, look, I still don't know what I want to do." What would you say to them?
Well, I've done it before with some PhD students, actually, is to sit down and write down what are your motivators. Now, when I did my own PhD, I had several motivators, lots of different things that are keeping me going through what is a very difficult long-term project. Because if you only have one thing that's motivating you, sometimes you can flag a bit and you can fall by the wayside and you just lose all heart, you know. But I had lots of different things that were keeping me going at different points. You know, I've got my partner, I've got my dad and my mum and dad, I've got class issues that were driving me. I've got career aspirations with it. All these different factors that kept me going through my studies and through my project. And it's the same to answer your question about young students, is you know, you're coming to university, but you're not sure why. So maybe write down what your motivators are, and if you don't have any, then don't push it, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If your motivating factors are what somebody else wants you to do, then that's wrong, isn't it? You know, if it's like because your parents want you to do it, or your friends on the same course, or because you're going to get very rich, then those are the wrong motivating factors. So you need to get a handle on what and why you want to do this, and if you've got some genuine motivating factors to do it, then it's going to help you progress and push on.
Because I think one of the things which, speaking with students, that I've kind of sensed is that some students feel like a sense of fear that once if I work and it turns out bad, I hate my job. But I say to when they do say those sort of things to me is that, look, if you have a bad experience working or you hate it, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because then that will push you to work hard. If I don't work hard, that potentially is what I could end up in.
What have you learned from that?
Yeah.
Or it's not a reason to give up and stop, is it? No. So exactly. So develop a bit of a thick skin and some resilience through doing more of it. Yeah. So I think you're right. Yeah. So this this is just us spouting off our experiences in it to try and help young people become more reassured and aware of what they can do in the future.
I mean, if I could go back, Joe, I would have. I think I spent about a year in Australia. I wish I'd taken 2 or 3 years living out there and then come back, because these sort of experiences, I think they're only once in a lifetime, aren't they? Once or twice in a lifetime. You don't get opportunities.
It could be because of finances, or it could be because you settle down and have a family, or you get into a job that doesn't allow it. Yeah. So if you get the chance when you're young, do it.
Because I think that's kind of our message, isn't it? Whilst you're young and you have opportunity, you should grab opportunities whilst you can, because as you get older, I think they do diminish.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take a chance. That's the last point from me, and you'll become enlightened, like in Plato's cave. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, I think on that cheerful note, guys, we'll call that a wrap. So until next time, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.